Never fathom you at all.
What's up, man?
How you doing?
The audio on that music.
I'm careful waking up the giant.
Cardall just sent me a message. He sent a picture. I'll send it over, but he's at dinner with this Italian restaurant. And his waiter comes up and goes, "Dude, that hat is awesome. Where do you get those?" So yeah, send him to the website. So
Really?
yeah,
That's
he's all,
awesome.
dude. He's like, I think your merch, just that merch right there alone is the good sellers.
Good style, right?
Yeah. I want one that's the Love You 2. This says like LUV2 or something like, or like LUVU2 or something maybe with the hand or whatever.
Yeah.
That'd be a freaking sweet.
Creative, man.
I need to send you the. I'd have to pay your brother. I'm not good. I'll draw you a stick figure drawing.
We've already got that agreement in place with him, so he's good.
And then I need to Venmo you. Like they're 13 a piece or whatever.
Yeah, for us.
Or whatever.
Yeah. Sweet, man.
Yeah.
We're ready to get going. What's up, Justin Middleton? How you doing, man?
What's up, brother?
I'm good. How are you? I'm trying to get some headphones tonight.
Give it just a couple of minutes to let people get in, and we'll get going.
I got home a little late. Nick wrote a repost it just to remind people. Let me see if I can.
Good. We're gonna see if we can blow Justin's mind here.
Blow his mind?
Yep.
Perfect.
He might blow our minds.
Probably.
He's not even listening.
Well, I'm listening.
Oh, I'm listening.
Oh, I heard you.
How's that music, man? You hear it on me?
Yeah. Trying to just resolve something from earlier today. Still lingering.
Yeah. Justin, this will bring home what we've been learning.
I've been on another trajectory lately. It ain't even lie.
Yeah.
If I wasn't seeing it for myself, I wouldn't believe it. Unbelievable.
Well, dude, let's see what this does for you.
I'm pumped.
I just reshared it out to the Giants again that it's live right now and to my page. So sorry for not doing that as well before.
Very good. Hi, Sarah. We got the famous Sarah Smith.
I love Sarah Smith.
Yes. Hi, Sarah Smith. The giant with the great last name. Cool. Well, in honor of time, I'm going to give it till 7:35. Just give people a little space to come in. And then we'll get going, and we're going to go solid an hour and a half. If you need to jump off, I'm going to record it. So if you can't be here for the whole thing, you can come back to it. Okay. And so get up for bathroom breaks, whatever you need.
Snacks.
Yep.
Snack guy.
Let the dog out. All right.
I'll throw myself on mute unless you call me out.
Yeah, that works. If you have some thoughts, though, anybody, if you have thoughts as we go through this, feel free to open up the mic. You can hit the space bar and it will unmute you temporarily while you talk. And then as soon as you let go, it mutes you. And then in the chat, I'll try and watch the chat. That might be a little challenging as I go through this, but if you have comments or thoughts, please share them. This is for you guys. So we'll give it 2 more minutes and then I'm diving in and we're going.
Thanks for always doing these trainings.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You're amazing.
I hope you have a notepad. We got Samantha and Dorothy Inez coming on. I don't know how many people will be in the group, but I promise you this will be impactful. This will be the most powerful meeting you've been in all year. And so will the next one and the next one and the next one.
The
committed to
Dorothy Inez. I love her.
Yes. Wow, what a group. I'm excited. If you have thoughts as we go through or things that come up, please share them, okay? In the chat, feel free to dialogue with each other, connect with each other. That's awesome. Perfect, Dorothy Inez, that's perfect. We're gonna be starting in 1 minute, so we give everybody a little space here. She's running a little late just listening in. I was thinking everybody could see it, but it's a direct message. Sorry, guys, you missed out. All right. There's so much to do.
Oh, there's a Jen Walter coming on. Holy buckets, Batman.
So I don't know if you know on the controls, you have the ability to raise a hand. So if you've got something you want to share openly, maybe raise your hand and then unmute and we'll jump into it, or share it in the chat and I'll watch that. Samantha's on. Let's get going. It's 7:35 p.m. here in Utah. It's 9:35 Eastern and we're ready to rock. So I think the biggest thing with this is as you go through this entire course, this is what I teach over 4 weeks, but we're going to condense it down into a 2 hour, hour and a half. I'm going to say an hour and a half. I'm not going to hold you hostage for longer than that. But I want you to just imagine what your life might be like at the end of this if you were to implement these processes and journeys into your life. And so we're going to cover a lot as we go through this. We're going to talk about the process of being. Justin, you'll relate to this. Who you be creates what you do in your world. As part of the Giant's Journey, when I wrote this book, I wrote it as an adult book for kids. It's like Who Moved My Cheese? It's a message that really hits home, and in 30 minutes, you can implement this into your life, just like Who Moved My Cheese, and really create a giant life. And so as you go through this, we're going to talk about the journey of unconsciousness. We're going to talk about the journey of awareness, grief, acceptance, gratitude. We're going to dive into uncertainty, vision, surrender. We're going to talk about nurturing, feeling good, abundance, and giving back. And each of these is important. If at any point you find yourself along one of these journeys, this is going to give you the tools so that you know how to navigate it. And so be conscious of what comes up inside of you more than what I say in this course, because that's what's going to matter for you. That's what's going to anchor it in. There's somebody that said that we don't see the present as it is. We see the present as our memory is. And so we bring it into the present. We call that the remembered presence. And so it creates everything that we see. And we're going to talk about that. So as we go into the journey of unconsciousness, our story began with Rit in the world of smalls, eating small pea soup, eating crackers, doing what smalls do. He was living a small life. He was unconscious to his behaviors. It's just what was. So as he was going through that, there was nothing to change because he didn't know there was anything to change. Unconsciousness is a beautiful thing. It allows us to do more in our world. Alfred North Whitehead, he says that civilization advances by extending the number of important operations which we can perform without thinking of them. If you just pause for a moment and think about all the things that you do automatically, brushing your teeth, driving a car, computer programs, walking, talking, eating, all these things at one point were very conscious behaviors. They took a lot of effort, but our brain has the ability to automate these things so that you don't have to think about them. Because if you had to think about them, it would take up so much energy that you would get nothing done. And so as we learn to do certain behaviors, they become automatic, freeing up space for us to do more and to advance. If you look at Rit, when he was living his life, he was living an automatic life like many of us do. He didn't know any different. It was what he was used to. Life was happening to him, not for him. And so as he was going through his life, he was wondering why it was that he wasn't even wondering why it was the way it was. It just was. And so it took an opportunity to look up to the sky to see what was going on. And we'll talk about that as we move forward here. But I want to talk about these unconscious behaviors and how they're created in our world. When we come into the world, we come in with very little programming. We develop most of our brain about 5 months to 25 years after we're born. And when we're creating our first values, those cultural values, those base values, our families, our adults, our caregivers, they're the ones that create those primary values for us. And so they become foundational for the rest of our lives. And we do have the opportunity to change them. I don't know if you guys can see my mouse. Will you let me know? Give me a thumbs up if you can see that moving on the screen. So you start with a history. Your story is the story that you tell or that was told to you. And that history creates the foundation for your values. So the values are the things you hold as important. And so those values are foundational to all of your beliefs. So you might have values around money, religion, spirituality, acceptance. These are all values. And from those stem beliefs. And those beliefs are the things that we hold true or hold as truths. And as we act on those, they become automatic. They become our habits. And so what happens is we take this way of being in our mind, the values, the history, the beliefs, the thinking patterns, and we make predictions into the world. And the beauty of the word prediction is it means to predict, to dictate into the world. So before you speak it into the world, you predict it in your mind. You play it out in your mind before you speak it, because the word is very powerful. So as you predict it into the world, you start to speak it into the world, you start to create and take actions around that in the world, and that becomes your reality. You create results from that. And it's from those results that you create perceptions, which is the way that you see it, feel it, experience the world. And that perception is based on your history, habits, values, and beliefs. Can you see how this would keep you a little stuck? This is what I call the insanity cycle, is because we take what was given to us and we predict and we go out and speak the words and we take the actions and we create the results, and there's this repeat and we stay stuck in this cycle. And that's what happened with Rit in the story. Is he had this story that was shared with him. He believed it. He lived into it. And that's what many of us do when we're trying to create our lives, is we play into these histories and values and beliefs that we've held dear forever. And then we predict that into the world and we make judgments based off of that. So what goes on inside of you is your way of being. What goes on outside of you is created by your being. That's your doing. And so that's your words, your actions, and your results. That's all of the doing. So I had somebody reach out today and they shared that humans are not nouns. We call ourselves doctors, lawyers, attorneys, as though that's who we are. I love Brene Brown's visual of it. She says, I'm not just one thing. Now I'm going to have you mute out here. I'm getting some feedback there. As you're being something, you're going to speak that into the world. It's going to become your doing, and that's going to create your reality. Who you're being inside of here is going to create your reality out here. And this is kind of the process of that. What happens though is we have this misalignment with who we say we are to the world and who we are on the inside. So it's our shadow being. And there's this misalignment with what we're telling people we are and who we are on the inside. And what really shows up is who we're being on the inside. Is that clear? Does that bring up some stuff for you? I might check the chat here. How many of you can relate to a shadow way of being? Something that you hide from the world. You don't want everybody to know it. Dorothy Inez says she can relate. This shadow being is at play. When we can align that with who we are in the world, then we're in integrity, because who we say we are and what is in the world are the same thing. Integrity is simply, and Justin, you'll relate to this, is the difference between what you say you will do and what shows up as reality in your world. That's integrity. So integrity doesn't mean anything about your commitments. It just means how much your word that you speak into the world shows up in the world as reality. So until you face this shadow being, this way of being, all you're doing with your life when you go out there and you create and you say these I am statements and you start saying that you're going to be all these things, but you haven't dealt with that shadow self, this is what you're doing. You're frosting dog poop. I'd use another word, but we'll keep it clean for the presentation. So until we face that, that's all we're doing is we're saying, I am this, but on the inside, we haven't worked through that process of really waking up to our potential. We haven't come into the awareness around these things that we do.
Hey, Dorothy Inez says, for me, the world,
Yeah, right there. Expectation of who I am and
Yeah.
my own struggles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is beautiful. There was a story shared with me a while back by a friend. It was the pike, the crayfish, and the swan, right? And they had to carry a load. It's a Russian tale. And they were tasked with moving a load from one spot to another. And the swan said, I'll take it to the sky, and started flying away with it. And the pike said, I'll take it to the river, started flying away with it, or swimming away with it. And the crayfish said, I'll drag it back to my hole. And it started dragging it the other direction. And the load didn't move because they were all going different directions. And a lot of times in our lives, people want to have a say in how we show up. And then we try and listen and please all these people. And then we end up going nowhere because we're not being true to ourselves. So being in alignment, if we go back to this slide here, it's aligning who you are on the inside with who you are on the outside. Some people align in the opposite direction. They take the golden side and they take it over to the dark side, and they just want to show up dark in their world. That's a possibility. Our goal is to elevate that. That's what we're trying to do with the giants. So yeah, pull the weeds, right, Justin? Al says, very well said. Thank you. Let's talk about awareness, because when you're unconscious, there's nothing to do. I'm going to play a little video here on how to change this. So let me just create for you a sense of what awareness looks like. So watch this carefully and listen to the video, and then we'll chat.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make?
Go!
The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Go!
Man.
Well, that's powerful.
Yeah. Can you see how we see what we want to see in the world? How many of you saw the moonwalking bear the first time around? Maybe you've seen this video before. I might have you raise hands. It's a little hard. I might have everybody turn on your videos if you can, so that I can see your faces and have some interaction that way. Is that okay? It gives me a little bit of a room to talk in. And since there are so few of us, if you want to speak, if you want to unmute, you can go ahead and do that. It's a small enough room that we can do that. How many of you, by raise of hands, saw the walking bear, the moonwalking bear the first time around? Yeah. Isn't that interesting? That we're so focused on one thing that we missed something that was definitely there. And as
I
we
was
play
just
it
trying
back,
to get
we
the
see
answer
it.
right, Nick. Like I thought there was a treat or a prize, something.
Yeah. I need to get a prize in there. It's amazing what happens. Let me talk about the tree of change, because this is what occurs in our world. When we look at our values, so I go back to the history that starts in our mind and the values that are created, that comes from our culture, and those values are foundational to everything that we do. Values really drive what we think is important in the world. And it's from those values that we establish our beliefs. And those beliefs are the things that we hold true. And it's from those beliefs that we pull in the thoughts that support or confirm or serve us in the creation of our world. So we have 50,000 to 70,000 thoughts a day. These thoughts are available possibilities in the world around us to draw from. They can be memories, they can be manipulations of memories, they can be events in our environment. But we take those, and based on our beliefs, we start to create affect in the world. We have moods, and we start to have these emotions, and we find things that are valuable in the world, and we start to put that energy out there. And from that, we start to speak, and that creates our fruits or our results. And so what occurs is, based on all of this, we create these perceptions, just like the moonwalking bear. We have these perceptions, and we have a sensory perception filter that stops us from seeing things that aren't relevant to us. And so instead of seeing the world as it is, we see the world as we are, is the way that it's said. So however we're being inside of here is going to create what we see out here in the world. So when an event occurs, somebody does something, we take that in and we internalize that based on our internal way of being, which is based on our values, our cultures, our beliefs. It's based on our thoughts, our affect and emotions. And then the words that we're speaking and the actions that we're taking, we create these perceptions. And so it supports whatever's going on in here. And so the way that to change and become a giant is to really affect not the thoughts or the emotions, but to really look at the beliefs that are creating all of that. And so when Rit sees the giants for the first time in the book, he starts to ask these questions. He starts to ask powerful and expansive questions that get him curious about what's possible. He starts to say, you know, can I be a giant? Why are they so big? How did they get that big? Is that possible for me? Versus restrictive questions, which would be along the lines of, why am I so small? Why does my life suck? How come it's so hard for me and everybody else gets it easy? These are restrictive questions that really box us in, and they create emotions around that make us feel restricted and small. And so as soon as he started asking expansive questions, he started getting curious and he started to explore his world. And that's the goal of becoming a giant, is to take those unconscious behaviors, bring them to the surface and not get mad about them, but to really get curious about them. Because it's in that curiosity that we're going to start to shift ourselves. And so what happens is, when you bring up these emotions, something goes on. Rit started sharing these with his family, his friends. He started saying, you know, what's it like to be a giant? And they would tell him, you can't be a giant. Giants are special. They have special powers or abilities. You're just a simple small, or smalls will never become giants. And so there's this disconnect between what he thought is a possibility and what is. And grief will do that to us. So the reason that the journey of grief is next in the process here is because we really have to look at what is not in our lives before we can move forward. And so when we bring up to consciousness what was unconscious, there's going to be some grief around that. Sometimes there's excitement. You know, you can have some excitement, curiosity about it, but a lot of times we're going to run through this process of grief and it's going to feel really heavy. There's a disconnect from what we think should be and what is. And so a lot of words, if you look at these words that are on the screen, I'm going to read a few of these. So some of the words that are connected with that depression that comes up with grief are apathy, slipping, drowning. I feel like I'm drowning. Somebody's better than me. I'm loathing. There's a worthlessness. I'm lonely. I'm no good. I'm in a rut. I'm surrounded. These are all restrictive thoughts and feelings that come up with depression. There's this loss of energy that comes up with it, and a loss of motivation. And it's in that loss of motivation. I know everybody in this room has experienced that in some form, that you have a dream and a vision and you're moving toward it and it doesn't go the way you thought. And you slide back into that state of depression and grief about the loss of what you thought should be. And there has to be a rebuilding. Can you guys relate to that? Yeah. Sarah, I think of your story about having the brain tumor and the thoughts that came with that, of what might not be because of that, or what was lost when you discovered that was going on, all the things that were lost. And there's this grief over that. And so as you're processing grief, there's this space for grace in your life. And so when we go through grief, this is what occurs. When something shifts and becomes different from what we thought it would be, somebody passes away, we lose an ability, we find out we have a tumor, we find out we have cancer, we find out our business partner is doing something that doesn't align for us, we find out our business is failing, whatever it is, we have this shattering of the world as we thought it should be or could be. When we were down in Southern Utah teaching the teachers, one of them said the parents had a loss of the ideal that they had for their child before they were born with a disability. And so as soon as their child was born with a disability, there was grief over what that child could have been. And so they have to realign with supporting that child where they are. And so there's this shattering and there's this withdrawal that occurs. This is from Susan Anderson's work. So we withdraw from the situation, we start to internalize. And man, it's so fresh, Sarah, your event on Sunday when you were talking about pulling back and leaving that office and being angry and going back and reflecting on all of the things that went on. That is a normal process of grief. And then there's a rage that comes up. And after that rage, we start to lift, because rage takes us out of apathy. It's actually a powerful tool to move us from apathy. The challenge is that people stay in this cycle and they don't lift. And that's where the problem comes in. And so it's not that you're having rage or you're withdrawing or internalizing. It's not that you're in denial or angry or bargaining or that you're experiencing depression. It's that we're not lifting. And that's the goal, is to take these things and learn from them and grow from them. Depression is actually an evolutionary adaptation. And so it serves us when you recognize that, because it moves us from the space of grieving and looking at what is not to accepting what is, because it's that will be foundational for everything we do. As soon as you can start accepting your life the way that it is, you can start moving forward to create something different. So Rit, in the story, when he started sharing where he was and it wasn't accepted or received, and this is all an internal journey, he had a chance to really sit with that grief and look at what he wanted to do next. And so when you look at depression, these are the ways that depression serves us. So you'll never look at depression the same again. You'll look at it as a tool that reminds you that it's time to re-engage and reset, because that's what it's doing. It's designed to pull us away from the creation that didn't work and find a solution. So let's say that you're creating something in your life and it fails. You're going to resign a little bit. You're going to pull back. You're going to have that withdrawal. You're going to reflect on it. And that rumination is going to pull up ideas and possibilities if you'll allow it. You're going to really look at reality as it is. And you're going to have a sense and connection to what is right now. That's going to put you in the present. And when you get in the present, you're going to have a reverence for that experience. It really humbles you when things don't go your way or the way you think they should be. And when you have that reverence, you start to have empathy and compassion, not only for yourself, but others. And then from there, you want to re-engage with your life or your purpose. And if the purpose that you had isn't serving you anymore, then create another one, because that purpose is what's going to drive you into re-engaging. That purpose could be as simple as taking one step today. I talk about JOT goals, just one thing. You might take just one step today. You might take a shower. Al, we talked about this in the radio show, that there were days that you could just paint one wall, and that was all you could do. And then the next thing you knew, you're painting a whole house. And the next thing you know, you're running a radio show.
Yeah,
Is that
so
accurate?
true. Yep,
Yeah.
right on the button. Yeah.
So the quicker you can move through this, that creates resilience. So if I were to push this button, this reset button, that's what depression is. It's a reset. It's an opportunity to re-engage with your life. What was working isn't working. So your body is pulling back the energy to have you stop from putting energy into that thing for a minute and really reflect and be with it. Because as soon as you do that, you're going to create a change in your life. Dorothy, go ahead and unmute. If you'd like to share, that'd be awesome.
Hey, so I'm listening to this, and I'm really resonating with it, Nick, because I've been going through, I didn't, like I consider myself like a really high vibe person, but the last couple of months I've just been like, I'll just be sitting here and all of a sudden this, and you gave me the word for it, this tremendous grief comes over me, and I just start crying, and I'm like, what is it? What is it? And I'm just sitting here listening to you go through all, and I've literally, unbeknownst to me, gone through all of these stages, and I'm in this re-engage stage right now because of just having so many disappointments, reevaluating, myself. Where have I been out of integrity? Not doing my spiritual practices, just kind of getting caught up in ego rather than keeping myself connected to what I believe God had planned for me, trying to, just getting off track. And like I was saying in my little note, being who people think I should be, or who I am, instead of really just staying true to myself. And so I'm in this place of returning to my roots, which is allowing me to re-engage and giving me somewhat of a different result.
That's beautiful. I think about this. A lot of people take their lives, they end it way too early because they get stuck in resignation and reflection, rumination. And it's in that stuck point that they disconnect from life the way that it actually is. And there's no reverence for it, and there's no re-engagement, and they feel hopeless. If we go back to the words here on that list, it feels overwhelming. There's no energy for any of it. And sometimes the best thing that you can do is to just re-engage, even in a small degree. Like if you could do just one thing and re-engage with that, then that's going to give you the energy to move into the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And Dorothy, Inez, as you've seen, if one door closes, depression gives us an opportunity to look for other doors.
Yeah. And, and a lot of people, I guess you would say maybe that aren't living in this place of awareness, you would allow it. Like some people take their lives rather than taking that and just kind of living in the question and being open to what is this here to teach me. And that's where, as painful as it's been, that is the space that I've been letting myself be in, but it's painful.
Yeah.
To work through those things sometime. But I know on the other side, which I'm beginning to experience, is the joy.
Yeah, beautiful. Any other thoughts around that before we move forward? Anybody else want to share? And I'll check the chat. And Samantha, yeah, we are recording this so that you can watch this later. And the awareness, Ryan, like you say, is the key. Because if you're unconscious, there's nothing to change. If you don't know what you don't know, there's nothing to do. It's as soon as you bring it to the awareness, knowing how to handle that is going to be what's powerful and what changes things. Because if you're just aware of it, but there's no change, then it can feel really defeating, not knowing how to navigate that. You're just aware of it now. And so our goal is to transform it, to take it from what it was that's no longer useful and make it useful, turn it into something that serves you. And so when you start to look at depression as a tool that serves you, it really is designed to help you stop putting energy into things that are no longer useful to you, to grieve that loss of the ideal that you had in mind, and to come at it at a different angle or a different approach, or to leave it behind, because there will be times where the best decision is to let it be what it is and move to something else, put your energy somewhere else. I love Viktor Frankl's work when he talks about moving the energy from, having all of your freedoms taken away, but to choose a purpose in your life is the greatest freedom that we have. To know that we have a say in our life, even when all other freedoms might be stripped, we can still create purpose. And purpose, the word purpose comes from Latin. It's to move forward and to pause. And so we have multiple purposes in our lives. We have purposes in relationship. We have purposes in our businesses. We have purposes around our friendships. We get to choose them, and they can be small and they can be big, but they're all created. And so when you feel disengaged and you're feeling that depression, the goal here is to recognize that you're there, because if you don't know you're there, it's really hard to change. Again, you can become unconscious in depression. And so as soon as you become aware of it, to recognize that you're there and to know what tools will bring you out of it. We're going to talk about tools throughout this course that are going to help you to move through it a lot quicker, because resilience is how quickly you move through that depression. That's all it is, to re-engage. Sarah, did you have a comment?
This is just such great information. So I'm glad that it's recorded. I can't write fast enough and think fast enough is so great. But
Yeah.
with grief, I used to view it as resistance and uncomfortable, and I don't even want to go there, but it really is all about curiosity. And I view grief like a friend now, with compassion. You know, it's like, what is coming up, that awareness and curiosity. And so instead of something that I just want to push away, I bring it close like a friend. And like you were saying, how grief is there to serve you, it really is to lift you someplace higher.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Dude,
perfect.
I love that, Sarah. That just shifted some things in my mind, like, because I some people will shun that, or they like hate that, or I hate that feeling, or whatever. But if you just switch that view to, oh wow, that's what it is. Okay, come on in, friend. Let's just figure this out.
Yeah.
I love that.
Beautiful. Notice that when you're depressed, you're really thinking of yourself. It's all internal. It's me, my, I. We rarely talk about others in depression. When we talk about grief, grief is reflected outward. It's a little different. Depression is inward. And so depression in the body causes inflammation, and that inflammation is going to cause a loss of energy in the body. So you're going to shut down. It's like unplugging a battery. Your phone, when it dies at night, you don't think anything of it. You don't think it's the end of the world because your phone died. You go plug it in. And that's what depression is a recognition that your battery is low, that what you're doing might need to shift, and really use it as a tool. It's a tool. Depression is one of the most valuable tools that you'll face, and learning to work through is going to really shift your life. Steve Maraboli, he says that letting go isn't having the courage to release the past. It's about having the wisdom to embrace the present, what is right now. And so depression helps you to get connected with what is, if you'll use it that way. And so as we move forward, the next step here, the natural step, is acceptance, because we go from grief and depression to resistance is the tendency that we become aware of something, we bring it up, it was unconscious, now we're aware of it, we go through the grief of it, and now we're resistant. I can't be that way. This is not okay. The biggest thing around acceptance is it's taking what is as a gift to bring it in willingly, whatever it is. It could be the worst thing in the world in your mind, but you might be able to hold some space to love it exactly like it is. I've got a quote in front of me. It just says, the key in letting go is practice. So each time we let go, we disentangle ourselves from our expectations and begin to experience things as they are. That's from Sharon Salzberg. So our goal with acceptance is to accept things as they are, because that becomes a space where we can grow from. Because if you're resisting it, you're really stuck in that denial, that bargaining, that trying to shift it through ways that are ineffective, not useful. So imagine there's a bear in a field. You're driving down the field or the road, you see a bear in the field, and you think that there's a bear in the field. And you go out in the field and you say, you can't be here. And you tell that bear to shoot, get out of the field. You don't belong here. And then you go and punch the bear, right? You get in a fight with the bear. How's that going to go? I mean, Ryan the Lion Morris might be able to take the bear, but
I might get one lucky jab in.
yeah, right. I don't know if you guys have seen the video. I wish I should probably show this one where the guy fights the bear for the salmon. They have a karate fight on YouTube. If you get a minute after, check it out.
I was thinking of Jackie Moon wrestles a bear on Semi-Pro.
Oh, that's right. That's right. He's trying to get out of the cage. The alternative to this is that you're driving down the road, you see the bear in the field, and you think, there's a bear in the field, and you let it be. And it's okay for the bear to be in the field, and you know that the bear's there, and you hold your space from it, and you give it the space it needs, and you let it just be what it is. It doesn't mean agreement. It doesn't mean you love that there's a bear in the field. It doesn't mean that you agree that there's a bear in the field. But you can hold space for there to be a bear in the field. And many of us have these things in our lives that feel like that bear in the field. You shouldn't be here. I don't want you here. I don't like you. And the more space we can hold for it, the more we have a chance to move away into something stronger, more powerful. Iyanla, if you don't know who she is, you might start following her. She coaches Oprah Winfrey. And she says acceptance does not mean agreement, nor does it mean we feel good about what we're facing. It means that we're willing to look for and embrace the lesson. It also indicates a willingness to grow through the experience. And so acceptance is one of those things that we get to do that just gives space for what is. It just means what is. And that's simply it. And so from there, we can start to grow. Brene Brown says that you either walk inside your story and own it, or you stand outside your story and hustle for your worthiness. So when we talk about ownership, that's going to be the next phase here within acceptance. Is ownership simply means, or honesty simply means ownership. So when you're honest with yourself, you're looking at the truths that you hold dear, all of these beliefs that you hold as valuable, and you're honest about them, meaning that you own them 100%. They are what they are. You could speak them, you could share them, you can talk about them openly and express them. And all you're doing is you're expressing ownership of what is, the way you see it, the way you experience it. So if we were to go all the way back to that first slide where it talks about what goes on inside of us, the values, the beliefs, the stories, that's honesty, is paying attention to that. We might even change what we're honest about. We might shift our truths where our truths change, and now we're owning something different from what we used to own because we have a new perspective on it, a shift in the way of being. So going back to Brene Brown's comment, you can either walk inside your story and own it, or you can try and please the world like we were talking about and try and be what everybody else wants you to be and ignore what you need for you. Ignore your truths. Does it mean that truths are set in stone and that your truths are going to be the same now as they are 10 years from now? They could be. They very well could be. You might anchor them in and carry them forward. But being honest and open about that just says that you recognize that they're there. I love this. If you haven't read his book on radical honesty, Brad Blanton, he says that the stress that kills or cripples most of the population comes from people being too hard on themselves when they don't live up to their own imaginings about how other people think they should behave. That's a twist. So we make ourselves suffer over what we imagine other people are thinking about the way we should be. And then we make ourselves suffer over that. The reality is this is all occurring within us. And so the place for that to change is within us. And so as soon as we recognize that, then we can start to shift it in here where we really do need to shift it. Because somebody could do something out here and it would impact us, or somebody can do something out here and it would mean nothing to us. And it all occurs right in here. Our judgments, our way of being affects how we experience that thing. Does this bring anything up for anyone?
Yeah, I mean, I had this kind of this exact conversation with myself earlier today. It's just been busy business, committing so much time. And I was like, man, I should be doing more. And then I'm like, wait, like I set the bar for what more is. So right now it's good, and I just had to kind of just change the perspective on what more was. Like there's always more to do. There always will be more to do. But just being like more today is exactly what I did. It was exact. It was perfect. So
yeah. How should today have gone? Exactly as it did, right? Exactly as it did. And you can choose within that to create. And so when you become aware of what is underlying and what isn't serving you, and that's all we're trying to do. We're not trying to change the things that are useful to you. We're trying to change the things that are not serving you. And so when you become aware of those and you grieve what isn't, and you accept what is, then it moves us into the next phase of gratitude for what remains, for what is. So gratitude is the foundation. It's the seed. It's the dirt. It gives us a space. I mean, if you took a tree and you cut the whole tree down and all you had was one seed, you could grow an entire grove with thousands of apples on it if it were an apple seed. And so all you need is a flicker of hope to plant. And gratitude gives us that. So when we look at what is not, and then we look at what is, and then we have gratitude for it all, it really gives us space to move forward. So that's the ground where your dreams begin to grow. And I love that gratitude comes from the same GR root as grief, meaning a lifting for gratitude, a lifting of weightiness. So now you're lifting out of that darkness. So acknowledging the good that you already have in your life is the foundation of all abundance. We all have some good in our lives. So I would, if we were going through the course, I'd have you pause and really just sit with that. What are you grateful for in your life? They've done some research that says when we automate gratitude, which we have a tendency to do, we put it on a to-do list, we check it off, we get it done, but there's no change in our world. And so they did research around this to see how frequently you should express gratitude. And they found that if you expressed gratitude less frequently with more attention and more emotion, it's more impactful than doing it daily as a practice. You could do it daily as long as you're present with it. But if it becomes automated, that's our tendency. There's no emotion in it. There's no change in it. There's no expression in it. And so when it comes to your gratitude, really sit and slow down with your gratitude. What are you grateful for? And if you're just going to check it off the list, pause for a minute. Give yourself some space so that you can really be present with it. So what's coming up so far is we're looking at, this is all a way of being. If we go back through the uncertainty, the awareness, the grief, the acceptance, the gratitude, these are all internal journeys that happen within you. What happens next is we go into the external expression, which is the doing. So those become the being. The uncertainty is the doing. And this is where we have all possibility in front of us. So did something come up for you that one of you would want to share, or any of you would want to share around these first steps of being an expression? It would be okay if nobody has anything.
Well, I just think gratitude is huge. We see what we want to see. And so if we're in a room, we're looking for all blue things, we don't even notice any of the yellow things. So the same thing, if we are searching for gratitude, things we're grateful for in life, that's what we're going to see. And that's what we're going to attract more of.
Yeah, beautiful. So it creates a perception, and you can actually shift your beliefs with that gratitude. You can shift your values. Sarah, look at you. You could hold the same values as Ryan, but have different beliefs about that value. And then create thoughts around that. So your gratitude gives you a space to really love what is, to love it, and to be grateful for it, and learn the lessons that come from that thing, whatever it is. Even the hardest experience can teach you lessons. Ryan and I have experienced that this last few weeks. Some challenging things that each of us get to face in our lives, and they're different for everybody, but there's lessons in all of them.
Sarah taught me just now, a new way of seeing something, as maybe a challenge, but then just shifting it. I mean, it's so simple, yet that one thing that she recommended changes everything.
It's perfect. That's what it's all about, is to inspire within you something different. How many of you love uncertainty? Just do a raise of hands or just a thumbs up.
I'm learning to.
Yeah, Justin. Yeah. Love uncertainty. Sarah, do you love uncertainty? No.
Not so much.
Not so much.
I always say I'm like Janet Jackson. I like to be in control.
Yeah, Dorothy Inez. Yeah. It's we're gonna shift that. We're gonna shift that because your greatest growth is gonna come from uncertainty.
And this
as
is
much
why
as
I run right here.
Yeah, as much as we say we love certainty, most of our fears come from trying to maintain certainty. And most of the beauty that we want in our world is going to come from the uncertainty, because uncertainty, it puts us in a space of knowing reality exactly as it is and seeing what's possible. I'm going to take you through the certainty cycle. Okay, so when you have a thought, Ryan, you just had a thought, an inspiration, an idea, a shift of perspective. You're going to go out and act on that. We call that faith or action. You're going to go take action on it. You're going to go test it out. And you're going to go into a world of not knowing how it's going to go. You're going to speculate. You're going to try and guess into the future, predict into the future what's going to happen based on all of your experience. So this is where we bring in our remembered present. We bring in the past and we pull it into the present, and we act based on what we've experienced in the past. So really our present is made up of everything that's ever happened to us.
And that would be the root of the tree. Is that right?
That'd be the root of the tree, right? Or the values as well that you've held on to and the beliefs. So with all of that, you go out there and you start testing that, and you create what's called a sense of certainty. And I like the idea of going to Vegas. You put a quarter in the slot machine, you pull the handle, you win the jackpot very first quarter. You could say with a sense of certainty, every time I put a quarter in the slot machine, I'll win the jackpot. And that wouldn't be accurate, because what we know from testing is that the more quarters you put in, the more likely you are to lose. And eventually you could win, but the odds are really slim. And so testing brings us into the world of certainty. It's like the sun comes up. We don't worry about it coming up. We can count on it. So certainty is really the space of counting on things to do what they've always done. As a possibility, the sun could not come up tomorrow. The probability of that is really low. And because the probability is so low, it becomes certainty, because we can count on it. I could put a coffee cup on the table here, and all of the molecules in that coffee cup could align in such a way that they would jump in one direction, and the table molecules would jump in another direction, and the coffee cup would literally jump off the table without any effort from me. That is a possibility. It would be billions to one, trillions to one, likely never happen in any of our lifetimes or anybody on this earth from history to history in their lifetimes, but it is a possibility. And so certainty just says that we can count on things. So we start to create what we know about the world based on the things that we can count on. And then that becomes knowledge. So we take this collection of things that we know and we create knowledge. And then we learn how to use that in the world, and that becomes wisdom. And then we base our truths off of all of this experience. So our beliefs are based off of that experience. And then we go out and share it, teach it, and that inspires somebody else to go through the cycle for themselves. Now, our goal with the Giants and the Smalls is to help people bypass a lot of this speculation and testing. Because when you have a mentor, those mentors will get you up here a lot faster. They help you to see. Townsend Wardlaw is a great example of this. You know, there are people that have been out there and they've gone through this, and they say, I'll show you how to shortcut. It's not that you don't have to do the work. They just show you a way to move past it a little quicker. And so that's the power of mentorship. And so as you're looking at this, when nothing is sure, here's the beauty of it, everything is possible. So when you step into the world of uncertainty, that means there are no limitations. If you think of kids, they don't think in terms of certainty. They think of just what's possible. And somewhere along the lines, we traded that in. We started trading certainty for possibility, or possibility for certainty. And so the goal is to get back into that world of exploration, just really just be with it. What could you do? What are possibilities around your life? When you start to accept your life, you can start exploring the possibilities. When you're resisting your life, your brain closes off, your body closes off, and you don't see the options. You see the restrictions. But when you accept it as it is, then there's peace inside of that, and you get your brain back, and you're able to explore the possibilities again. So our goal as Giants is to really explore the uncertainty, to really just be with it. Which brings us into the journey of vision. When everything is possible, what could you imagine for yourself? So in the story, when he chases the giant and he comes to the edge of the cliff and he puts him on his shoulder and he stands up and he looks out and he sees this vision that he's never seen before. He starts to see the world a little different. The giant shows him as potential, puts him on his shoulder and says, this is what giants see. And Rit was never the same from that moment forward. I mean, he thought he knew what it would be like on this journey when he asked the giant if he would teach him, and the giant sets him on the ground and the giant just walks away. He doesn't even say anything. He just walks away, and Rit has a choice to make. Here's the beauty of the lesson of that part of the book is that no one is coming to save you. No one is coming to make life right for you. No one is coming to solve your problems. If you don't do something, nothing is going to get better. I think of the Munchausen story. I don't know if you guys have heard this. He gets stuck in the mud. And he's yelling for help and he's sinking in the mud. And this is an old fairy tale. And eventually he grabs himself by the ponytail and lifts himself out of the bog onto the land with his horse, right? The Munchausen. He rescues himself. And while we have support and people around us, the beauty of No One Is Coming is that it's up to us, just like written in the story, to follow the giants, to do giant things. It's up to us to make that decision daily. Because Sarah, nobody's going to come get you out of bed in the morning. Justin, nobody's going to run 26 miles, 200 miles for you. You got to do that for yourself. You know, Ryan, you have the same thing. Krista, Jen, Dorothy,
I
and
can't
Nez.
even run a mile, so 200 would be hard, Justin. I'm sorry, buddy.
So remember that it's up to you, and that could feel a little overwhelming, but here's the beauty of it being up to you is you get to imagine the world in any way you want. When nothing is sure, everything is possible. It really opens you up to explore who you are and what you're capable of. How many of you think you have the brain of Einstein? Yeah, I'm going to teach a little bit about the brain here. Einstein's brain was no different from yours or mine. He had 86 billion neurons. He had a few things that were a little different from ours, but what he had more of were glial cells. He had the ability, he had developed more of his hippocampi and neocortex. And so I'll talk about that here in just a minute. So as that grew, he was able to manipulate more information in his environment and be successful in creating the theory of relativity. Now, Einstein was an insurance salesman at one point in his life, and he was horrible. And one of the quotes that he has is that if you were to measure intelligence by someone's ability, let's say that you were comparing animals and you were measuring their intelligence by their ability to climb a tree, most animals would fail. And what we tend to do is measure ourselves by what we're doing and then call ourselves failures. When Einstein left insurance sales, he was a failure at insurance sales. He was terrible at it. But when he came into his space and started working on and manipulating the universe in his mind, he created the theory of relativity. Your brain has the same ability. There's a study done on London cab drivers and bus drivers. London bus drivers follow the same path every day. They're unconscious. They go on the same path, same time frame, same schedule every day. Taxi drivers, on the other hand, had to manipulate their environment. So not only did they have to know the map, they had to know the quickest routes to get there. They didn't have Uber or GPS at that point. What they found is that the cab drivers had bigger hippocampi and neocortex than the bus drivers because they were pushing themselves like a muscle to develop those areas of their brain. And each of us has the ability to do that. When the brain is in development, what it does is it creates neurons, and you never stop developing neurons from the day you're born to the day you die. And what comes in to support those neurons are called, they're called glial cells. And that's what I have up here on the picture. So your neuron is this long axon, dendrites. It has connections on the end, so it'll connect from one neuron to the next. It passes information in one direction. The oligodendrocytes, the astrocytes, the microglia, what they do is they come in to support that neuron. So as you fire something over and over again, these oligodendrocytes come in and say, you know what, we need to support that neuron. So they wrap it with a myelin sheath to make it fire faster and faster. The slowest neuron in your body fires at 1 mile per hour, and the fastest is at 268 miles per hour. It's as fast as a Bugatti Veyron at full speed. And so the reason it's able to do that is because the oligodendrocytes come in and support that neuron and build the myelin sheath around it so that it fires faster and faster and faster. The astrocytes come in and support the connections on the end, the synapses, to make sure that the chemical signals are not lost and that they're held in place. The microglia go in and clean everything up. They break down dead material, consume it, break it down, keep the whole area clean. Your brain is full of these 86 billion neurons, 2 to 3 times that number in support cells. To say that we are supported is a misnomer, because our brains are no different from Einstein's. And as soon as we recognize how that process works, that as we create behaviors and we do them over and over again, that they're going to get more and more efficient until eventually we can automate them and do them without thinking, which is the whole process at the very beginning, what Alfred North Whitehead said. We advance by the number of important operations which we can do without thinking about them. The goal is to transform the ones that are no longer useful into useful ones one thing that I'll tell my clients is that in order to get what you want out of life, you've got to be willing to suck at something long enough to get good at it. And we have beliefs that I can't suck at it. We have beliefs that I don't want to look stupid. We have beliefs and perceptions that say it's not okay to do that. But Justin, I guarantee you weren't running 50 miles when you first began. You weren't running 200 miles when you first began. Sarah, when you had that brain tumor, you had to relearn to walk. You weren't very good at it at first when you started to do that, but you quickly recovered and you learned how to do it. The brain is plastic. So if you say, I don't have the brain for it, I want to slap you. You can't do that. I have the brain for it. You have the brain for it. When you recognize that we all have the brain for it, you stop limiting yourselves and you just start looking at what's possible for you. What does this bring up for you?
All right, I could run 200 miles, Nick.
Yeah.
I just don't want to, Justin.
Man, you know, the beauty of the way we are designed is we have access to everything that's created out there. The universe is ours. Not only are we in the universe is in us. It's in us. As they study quantum physics and they look at photons and protons and neutrons and how they all work together. And beyond that, beyond the photons is consciousness, which science doesn't have a name for. Some of us have called that God or the universe or Buddha or spirit, right? It's this connection with a consciousness that's beyond it all. Neil deGrasse Tyson, who doesn't believe in a God, still says the same thing. There's no deeper spiritual feeling than what that brings to me, knowing that not only am I in the universe, but the universe is in me. We are only limited by what we choose to believe, because those beliefs affect our thoughts, and those thoughts affect our attitudes and our emotions, and those emotions affect what we speak into the world and what we work on in the world. When we recognize our power and what we're capable of, we are all similar human beings. There's no difference from any one of us in this room with our brains and our bodies. There was a young lady who had half of her brain removed because of a disease, and she was having seizures. She was about 3 years old. She started having seizures at 3, and she would just fall over and she couldn't control them. They found out that the right side of her brain was swelling in such a way that it was destroying itself, and they had to remove it before it took the whole brain. They took out half of her brain. The body filled up that cavity with brain fluid. She went back to life as a kid, had friendships, went to college, got a degree, got married with half a brain. I know people who are in wheelchairs creating differences in the world. I know people who are amputees creating differences in the world. Sarah, I know your experience with a tumor creating a difference in the world. So there's no difference between any of us. It's how we choose to see ourselves, and that reflects in the world and who we're being, and then in turn what we're doing. So here's the other beauty of creation, is that there is no limitation to what you can create. Abundance isn't something we acquire, it's something we tune into. So when was the last time any of you created oxygen so that you could breathe it, so that you could be on this call today? It's beautiful. How many of you put together the body that you're in so that you could have this experience? The universe is infinite, and abundance is the default nature of things. Humans create that limitation. We create the idea of limitation. Elon Musk didn't have to go create Mars so that he could fly to it. It was already there. All of the materials that he's needed to be able to fly a rocket to Mars, to fly a helicopter on Mars like we've already done. Those materials have always been here, but our ability to use them and see them is all that shifted. It's already here. There was nothing to create. There was something to tune into. There was something to manipulate, something to transform from one form to the other. The laws of thermodynamics say that energy isn't created or destroyed. It's just transformed. As you move from one form to another. Our lives are not created or destroyed. They're transformed from one form to another. And so the only limitation that can appear is what we create for ourselves. Does this bring up anything for anyone? I like doing the little check-ins here, and And I might pick on somebody like Krista and Jen and Dorothy and Ez and Al. If you
I
have some
got some.
comments, please share. Yeah,
It's,
go ahead.
I'll say this just about, what you're saying is like, we create our own limitations. And what I notice is like, I have all the knowledge, like I know this, but it's like, how do you move beyond the knowingness into like this manifestation of it, of being, moving beyond your thoughts and into the truth of who you are. You know what I mean?
You're perfect timing. So I'm going to talk about that. You ready to dive in?
I'm ready.
Let's do it. I could go on for hours on this, so I'm gonna speed it up a little bit. So in the world, our way of being creates an impact on all of the things that are in our space. When observers observe a photon, it changes from a wave to a particle just by the sheer nature of observation. Particles make up everything that we see. Even atoms, they don't have color when you break them down to their lowest scale. There's no color. Our perception has color, but the atom itself does not. And so as we observe things and speak them into our world, we start to create in our world. And those show up in our reality. So who we're being gets spoken into the world, gets acted on, becomes our reality, and confirms who we're being. Does that make sense? We're going to go into it even more. So when you recognize what you're capable of, you stop limiting yourself with your words and your beliefs. So at first, your dreams are going to seem impossible, then improbable, then inevitable. And we're going to talk about how many pinnacles there are for you to climb. So as we go through this next part here, you look at Rip, when he stood on the shoulders of the giant, he goes home and he falls asleep and he grows. He falls asleep and he grows. He had visions and giant dreams for the first time in his life. Have you guys ever tried to unpop a popcorn seed? It's kind of like that. You have this personal big bang where there's a complete shift in the way you start seeing the world. There's no going back to the way that you were. So that's the start, Dorothy and Ez, is to recognize your potential and that you have limitless capacity for growth, that you can climb mountains without tops, that there is no end to your potential. Does that make sense? I'm going to have you unmute and go through this with me if I can coach you.
Yes, it does make sense.
Okay, we're going to keep going into tools on how. Okay.
Okay.
So you don't have to create anything in the universe. It already exists. Your job is to transform it from the energy that it is to something different. There's a story of the Buddhist monk who said he was going to build an ashwan, I think is the name of it, a Buddhist monastery. And one of the other monks said to him, yeah, ashram.
Yeah, that's how you say it.
So he wanted to do that. One of the monks said to him, where are you going to get the money? And he said, wherever it is. And in our lives, it's going to work that way. How are you going to get the resources to create what you want? You're going to get them wherever they are. So all of the possibilities that are out there, we want to explore those. Steve Jobs says you can't connect the dots looking forward. You only connect them looking backwards. So when you create a vision of what you want to create in your world, whatever that is, whatever purpose that is, you have to trust that the dots are somehow going to connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. If we go back to the very beginning of this program, Dorothy and Ez, one of the things that we try to do is predict from what we know. Can you see how that could limit us from seeing possibilities?
Yes, especially if you're operating from the past, your past, because this is what happens to me is like the past is basically I'm letting it dictate the future. And it's like, oh, well, the last time I did this happened. And so my expectation, even though I try, I'll say I'm not expecting this. I'm going in with a good, a different mindset. And then the exact same thing happens again and again, even though each time to me, I'm going in with a different mindset.
Perfect.
And so I don't understand how it keeps happening over and over. If I'm really going in, at least I feel that I'm going in with a different mindset and intention.
Okay.
That's where I get confused.
I love it. Yeah, you're doing beautiful. This is perfect. So think of a
Am I
tree.
helping us out here?
Yeah, this is great. And it'll tie it all together. So you think of a tree is perfect and it is crooked and it bifurcates and it goes in all kinds of directions. But as a whole, we look at it and we think, wow, that's beautiful. And we look at our lives and we think our lives need to go in a straight line. Like Dorothy Inez is who she is today, and she wants to be this thing over here. And there needs to be a straight line from where she is to that thing. And I would tell you that Dorothy Inez is more like a tree than a straight line. And it's beautiful. Sarah, you wore the shirt the other day that my path is not straight, right? The tree, the beauty of the tree is it teaches us to flow, to put energy into our dream, to create it, and to look for opportunities to shift directions as needed. So the tree will do that in scale. It's called a fractal. You'll see this in river systems. You'll see this in your circulatory system. You'll see this in highways. You'll see it in internet. It's the efficiency of flow. As you're out there testing and you're stepping into the unknown, you're starting to push energy into these different directions. You'll be going down a path and find out that that path isn't moving. It's not creating movement. And so you'll shift directions and move it in another direction. And then you'll find that that path is creating movement. So you'll put more energy into that. You might create these big branches with that energy. And then as you move forward, you'll get more and more efficient to where you are making minor adjustments in your life around certain things. But initially, there is a lot of branching trying to figure out who we are. If we look at this tree, I mean, one of these branches could be relationship. One of these branches could be our business. One of these branches could be our body. One of these branches could be our spirituality. If we look at these as our values and our belief systems, these are our opportunities to just remember that we need to just keep putting energy out there and watch where the energy flows the easiest. Because the universe is proficient at finding flow. I mean, if you put water in a river system that's dried out, it's going to follow the path of least resistance. Humans force things. Nature doesn't. So our job, even though it looks similar, this is where the nurturing comes in. So that I promise you, Dorothy Inez, this is going to pull this all together for you. So you must nourish your garden. It's like nourishing a garden. You go out and you work it every day, and you get weeds that come up some days and some days they don't. But the sun's shining every day. The sun never stops shining, even though a billionth of its energy is all that hits the earth. It never stops shining. And look at what a billionth of its energy can create in our world. And so imagine what a portion of your energy could create in your world if you'll keep putting energy into your world. The challenge with depression and grief is we start to give up when we have that resistance. And so we feel that, and then we think, I'm going to stop shining. It's too self-similar to yesterday, like Groundhog Day. I'm going to stop shining. So your garden is in its opportunities. Let me just reframe this. So your garden is opportunities or business or dreams or simply the season of spring. Your garden is your place to play with things, to really be with it daily. Everything that we create in our lives is a daily effort. We put energy into it. To nurture is simply to have care and attention, to give someone or something that attention that they need to grow or develop. I love Mandelbrot. So I think Dorothy Inez, this will help tie this in even more. He said that bottomless wonders spring from simple rules which are repeated without end. This is what our life could look like with the small and simple steps. This is Romanoff broccoli. And it's a simple pattern that when repeated creates complexity in our lives. When you think of the movie Groundhog Day, when he's going through that movie and every day is the same, he starts playing with it and then he starts to find meaning in it. And then he creates a completely different outcome by the end. In our lives, they seem like Groundhog Day. It's like, there's no change. I'm doing different things. I'm adding to it. There's small incremental improvements, but it doesn't feel like there's a change. Dorothy Inez, if you look at this image, what could you learn from this broccoli about what you just shared?
Well, if I'm the center of the broccoli at the top, what I see is all the from all the small things, big things can occur, because as it starts out with all the little small, and it's like a windy road, and then it just starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah. So incremental improvement, incremental growth, small steps repeated create complexity. You look at a giant's not taking giant steps. They're just bigger in capacity. It would be like one of these branches out here taking giant steps to this small over here. Self-similar patterns, going back to this thought here by Mandelbrot, when repeated, create complexity without end. It's limitless. We think we're limited. But Dorothy Inez, you're going to create yourself in one way and then come over here and do it again and do it again and do it again and do it again. It's going to be self-similar. The behaviors that you use for one creation are going to be similar to the ones that you use for another creation. It's just a different creation. And so trusting that each step that you take, even though it feels the same, is expanding and growing and creating a difference in your life.
And who
we have
she is, Nick, too, from like, I know who Dorothy Inez is.
Yeah.
She's a giant. And it took all the good, the bad, the whatever, all those labels, all the things, all the experiences to get to right now. And she's hit certain pinnacles or summits.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing is that she's still looking to grow and take more steps so that she can be even more giant or different or change in other ways. I think it's amazing. I think it's beautiful. She's an amazing giant.
I think the beauty of this too is that when we start to feel giant in one area, there's an opportunity to feel small in another area. And the beauty of being a giant is to look at all the ways that you can go out and feel small and climb that mountain or grow that thing, be that thing. And so just remember, small and simple steps repeated will create greatness and giant things in your life. It's not the complex and the big things that you have to do. It's the little things that create the complexity. Mathematics shows this, whether it's in a broccoli or your life or relationship or your business. You're going to take small steps, you're going to adapt, and you're going to grow. You're going to take small steps, adapt, and grow. And so to stick with it long enough for it to fulfill its vision, that's the goal. So Dorothy Inez, when you're looking at what you want to create as a vision, never let go of that. What we tend to get hung up on is the how. How am I going to do this? That's where the limitation comes in. We get really restricted on the possibilities, on what we can see, and it shuts us off to other possibilities. Our goal is to stay in the question of what's possible around this creation. What's something maybe I haven't thought of today? What's another possibility? Who's somebody else I could talk to? What's one more thing I could do today to create this vision I have in mind?
Well, and too, Nick, the other thing I just want to add, that can be a hindrance, and for me and maybe for some of us on here as well, is that I've been doing this for so long, coaching. Like you're saying, I get different inspirations, and there's a couple of things. Number one, I'm like this woman with so many gifts and talents that I want to give to the world. And then I look at my friends, like there's a couple of friends and we started together, and I'm like, why are they, at six figures and I'm not, and I'm still, I'm giving. And every time I put something out that I've put my heart and soul into, it's like one person or no person. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? It frustrates me. And in the beginning, I had this momentum, and then these last couple of years have just been the most aggravating, but I keep going. Like when we did our interview, I told you that thing that drives me is, at the end of my days is I'm really driven by my spirit. And and it won't let me stop, but I'm so tired. I'm just so tired of trying and trying.
Hmm. Can anybody relate to this in some form? Like, yeah. I feel that feeling in what I'm creating. I feel that feeling in creating even this conversation tonight. And what I've learned through all of it is to keep stepping. To keep stepping. Justin, I can imagine if you could share just quickly when you're running, because you have a vision of running 200, is it 250 miles? Yeah, 250 miles.
Yeah.
And what's the furthest that you've run so far?
32, 38, 32, something like that.
38 miles.
Mhm.
You have this vision, 250 miles. If one
That
were
one.
to measure the difference, right, between 32 and 250, they could say that is a huge gap between the two. And what is it in you that keeps you going day in and day out to keep pursuing that vision?
The uncertainty, man. I love it. Like I don't know where I will physically break down. And then at the points when I'm training where I physically break down, I find that all I got to do is just stop running and walk for a few minutes, and then your body recovers. And then it's so wild how you just come back and then you just continue running. And like none of it's easy, but it's also not hard.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know?
I want to hit on some things that you're bringing up. And Dorothy and Ez, I want to pull these into the lessons here is that you love it, you accept it. So if we were to call love acceptance, you accept it. It is what it is. And when you're pushing and you can't go any further, you pull back and you retreat. And we look at the cycle of depression and resiliency. One of the steps in there is retreat because it gives you a space to reflect and pull back from pushing. Because depression is really meant to just give us a space to step back and look at what we're creating, at reality like it is. Dorothy and Ez, where you're at right now, the experience that you're having is right in that cycle of depression, where there's an opportunity to just be at peace and revere what is in the capacity that you're in, to have a reverence for it, and then look for another way to re-engage. You know, the one thing that Justin just hit on is to step right back into pursuing the vision. Find one more way. Does that speak to you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why, I did retreat for a while. I just had to just, like you said, step back. And then
Yeah.
now I just, I don't know why I felt called to really tap into my beauty and self-love group that I have not been active in, and just being more vulnerable with these women, and just returning to my love of being a makeup artist and self-love, which is where I started out as a self-love and beauty coach. And I just feel like that's where my heart is, and that's the energy I need to be in. So it's stimulating creativity. And you and Ryan actually inspired me, because I felt like some shame around getting a job. And because I just wanted to have some stable income to fund my dream. And I said, you know what, I looked at you and Ryan, you guys work full time, and yet you're creating this massive thing. I was like, you know what, you can do it. If they can do it, you can do it. And but I tell you, I'm like, it's giving me this appreciation for the time that I didn't work, and for the time that, work a job, that is.
Yeah.
But also it's taken me to a place that's re-inspiring me, even though it's something am I making sense?
Yes. Yeah. Nope. You're
It's
doing
like
good.
going out into, I haven't worked a job in over 20 years. And it's giving me an appreciation for what God has called me to do. And it's reigniting, like I said, this fire in me, because I'm like standing up for 32 to 40 hours. I don't like it. It hurts my body. And it's just, I'm saying to myself, all this time you're spending on this. This is what I want you to do when you're able to go back to working your business full time. I feel like I'm going to have more of an appreciation and a fire. If that's
Yes, you can imagine if you were to play this out, I'm going to go back through and recap this because there's this unconsciousness and awareness. You have this awareness around what's going on for you. And then there's this grief that's going on for you right now. You're right in this space of grief about the way it should be. You know, somebody else is succeeding over here. I have this ideal that it should be that. I have this ideal that I should not be working a job. And so there's some grief around what you think should be. And then there's this opportunity for acceptance around that. As soon as you get into the space of acceptance, the sadness dissipates, the peace comes in, you feel relaxed. Because when you're in that depressed state, you'll notice that your brain shuts down, your body shuts down, your energy levels shut down, and you're not able to create. Right. And so in that depressed state, you're not thinking of creation, you're in survival mode at that point. So acceptance gives you that space to just be in what you're in and be at peace with it, which brings your brain back, brings your creation back, brings back all the possibilities when you can accept what is. Resistance to it says automatically by the nature of resistance that you're fighting it, which fighting is a nature of survival. When you're fighting it and resisting it, you're in survival mode. When you're accepting it, you're at peace. And our goal is to get at peace with what is, express gratitude for the learnings that are there, and then step into the uncertainty, because I don't know how this is going to work for you, Dorothy Inez. All I know is you have a vision for what you want to create. Your goal, your job is to hold the vision and then to step into the unknown daily, just like that broccoli, to step into the unknown daily, small steps, one more thing, one more possibility, one more conversation, never knowing which one's going to be a breakthrough. And then pushing daily to make yourself small in other areas and find mountaintops to climb that where you're not a giant. Your greatest opportunity for growth is where you're not a giant, not where you are.
Right. And even the job was, you know, you're talking about this uncertainty. I didn't go looking for this job. I just went to go say hi to a friend.
Yeah.
She used to be my boss. And she was like, hey, I've got this job for you. And I'm like, dude, I didn't come in here looking for a job. But I was like, you know, this uncertainty. I was like, but why did this job come to me? Why? So I stepped into it because, you know, I was kind of in that place of, you know, with what am I, what's going on? This business thing isn't working. And this job showed up. So I said, okay, well, maybe God wants me to do this for a reason. I'm going to live in the possibility. I don't know what's next, you know, because I remembered when you and I had that conversation, you picked up on Dorothy Inez likes to live in control.
Yeah. So your ability to adapt, so to look for opportunities and stay open to the intuitions. When you're at peace with what is, you'll be open to the intuitions and the possibilities. When you're not at peace with what is, when you can't accept it, it really shuts you down and you see limitation.
Right.
And so stay open. Yeah. Is there another comment?
Space. I just wanted to say thank you because I feel really alone that I have, you know, I haven't had anybody like to feel safe to share what's really happening inside around my business for me. So thank you and Ryan for creating this sacred space.
Dorothy Inez, what I know about you is that, and thank you for sharing, because I know this serves everybody in here, is just keep stepping, keep going, because that persistence, you think about bamboo as an example here. They just shared this in our men's group, that it takes 3 years for bamboo to get into a space where it can start to grow. And then it has rapid growth within a short period of time. But for 3 years, it looks like nothing is happening. And then all of a sudden it shoots through and grows 2 to 3 feet in a day. And sometimes life can be like that. There can be this preparation phase where we're just pushing. Feels like nothing's happening. And then there's a breakthrough. If you've ever watched a plant grow in the garden, it's the same thing. Just let it do its work. Just keep putting energy into it, just like the sun does. It doesn't stop because it can't see the root break through. It just keeps shining. Ryan, did you have a thought there?
And you're not alone, Dorothy. So
Not alone.
you've got giant friends that are here for you.
So guys, we're gonna wrap up pretty soon here. So I'm gonna go through these fairly quickly on the final part because I want to honor time. And if you need to jump off, please do, and watch the video later so that we can honor your space. If you want to stay on with us for a minute, and we'll wrap this up. So when you feel good, your life starts to mirror how you feel on the interior. Lisa Feldman Barrett, she says that emotions are not reactions to the world, they're your constructions of the world. So an emotion is your brain's creation of what your bodily sensations mean in relation to what's going on around you out here. So numerous experiments showed that people feel depressed when they fail to live up to their own ideals, but when they fall short of a standard set by others, they feel anxious. So when you recognize where you're at, when you're in depression, you're really in yourself. Dorothy Inez, notice some of the words that I feel alone, me, my situation. Those are signs of feeling depressed. Anxiety will be worrying about what's going on out here, whether I measure up to that. Again, going back to the radical honesty, the idea that I have that somebody else might have about me and not measuring up to that. That creates the anxiety. So fear is a story. It's a creation. And then it's supported by your emotions and then realized in your actions. So when you make up that story and you start to feel that, you start to act on that, you create as your reality what you fear. And when you can accept fear as a tool as well, just like depression, it helps you to move forward. You think about the bus analogy. I love this because emotions can be passengers on the bus. You're the driver of the bus. Your emotions are allowed to be on the bus. They're passengers. If you were to stop and engage with your emotions, you're going to stop driving the bus. So you're not going to get to your destination. Our goal is not to fight the emotions or kick them off the bus. It's to give them space to be on the bus and drive to our destination. It's not ignoring them. It's not fighting them. It's allowing them space to be passengers. You drive the bus. Your life has gravity. Your emotions have gravity. They have weight. You have a way of being that you've done for so long and so many times that you've created this mass around your way of being. So when you go to create a new way of being, there's a big challenge there. You're going to roll back into the old way of being until you build enough mass around the new way of being. And when we look at the oligodendrocytes and the neurons and the behaviors and how they become automated, you've got to give yourself time and practice for that to become automated, because eventually that will have gravity and that will have a say in your life. And you won't go back to the old routines and behaviors. You won't even recognize the old life. And so give yourself space for gravity in the old life. As strange as it sounds, the greatest obstacle to healing your anxiety is you. You're the cure. In essence, you must learn to get comfortable in your anxious discomfort. The secret to recovery, however, is that once you reach a point where you really allow and accept it, it begins to fall away and discharge naturally. This is curious. Like when you allow space for it, it disappears on its own. There's nothing to do with it. Just shine light on it. Ryan, we talked about this on the radio show. As soon as you shine the light on the shadows, they go away. They immediately disappear. And a lot of times when we shine the light on our fears and our depressions and our sadness, we come back into our power. We are empowered in our power, which means we get our brain back, which means we're open to intuition.
So long, Nick, inside of that, like, and I'll be quick, but like,
Yep.
There's that fear that if people see this part of me, then they'll see me this way, or they'll judge me, or this. Once you release those and you just shine the light on or put it out there, it's interesting. Like the freedom, and then learning to love those parts. Like, and look, this is me. This is who I am.
It is.
I can love this person. I'm worthy. But then you can grow from it and shine, say, hey, this is how I show up in an area. Oh, okay. And then you have a choice inside of that. But the freedom that comes, it's just so amazing.
It is what it is, right? Like there's no shame in it. There's no guilt in it. It's just, you are acceptable exactly as you are. And in that acceptance, not out here from somebody else, in that internal acceptance of you, you're able to accept others where they are. It's beautiful. and you're able to create from there. You're able to get back in your power. So the giant's journey is really just that journey to get back into power, into your greatness. And so when you feel good, you do good. When you feel good, you start to create good in your world. And so the more you can realign with feeling good, the quicker you're going to bounce back into creation. And it doesn't matter what the creation is. The journeys are going to be similar. They're self-similar. They're just repeated. They're just a different thing. And so our goal is to bring to the surface as many unconscious, unuseful behaviors. Justin, we call this weeding the garden. You want to look for weeds. And so the more weeds you can find, and now that you have tools that you can weed them with to re-engage and just allow space and acceptance and gratitude for these things and forgive yourself for the judgments that you've had, you're able to get back in your power and re-engage with creation. And the more you do that, the bigger you grow and the bigger you grow. And there's no pinnacles. There's no limitation to what you can do. When you get to that point where you start to grow, you want to give back. You want to help others. There was a gentleman that wanted to solve the Rubik's Cube. It took him 26 years to figure out the algorithms on his own. This is in a time of YouTube where the fastest time of Rubik's Cube has been solved is 3.5 seconds now is the new world record by a human, 1.5 seconds by a machine. In a time where there is YouTube, this man chose to learn it on his own, which is a possibility. When he could have had a mentor. I can do it in 1.5 minutes. That's about my fastest right now on the Rubik's Cube. I could go faster if I want to put some effort into it, but I would go and learn from a mentor to speed up my progress. This gentleman lost his job. He lost his family over it because he was so obsessed and committed with figuring this out in a time where there are resources, that he used up all of his resources to create figuring out one thing. So really look at where you're using your energy. Mentors are there for a reason. They help you to shortcut some of this, to be in the energy quicker, to move through what you just talked about, Dorothy Inez, to move through that quicker. Oprah Winfrey, she says, is somebody who allows you to see the hope inside of yourself, because that's where it comes from. Someone who allows you to know that no matter how dark the night, in the morning, joy will come. A mentor is someone who allows you to see the higher parts of yourself when sometimes it becomes hidden to your own view. And I would imagine that feels really relevant right now. We all have limited, unlimited potential. And it doesn't matter what our challenges are, whether we're amputees in wheelchairs, we're brain tumor survivors, it doesn't matter. If we were completely whole, we would still have challenges. And so you were made for greatness. You were designed for greatness. Your body is already created for greatness. What is getting in the way is the beliefs around that greatness. When you get depressed and you don't know how to come out of it, you get anxious and you don't know how to work through that, or you stop stepping and you stop growing, you stop dreaming and you stop stepping into the uncertainty. So you can do anything you decide to do. Amelia Earhart, which is cool. She flew around the world. How phenomenal is that? When you really slow down with who you are, right? You start to recognize that you have all the potential in the world already inside of you to create anything you can imagine. And when you step into that journey daily, it's small steps repeated. They create complexity in your life. You grow and you grow and you grow, just like the character in my book, until you become a giant among giants. If we never had another course, if we never worked together again, this course right here would give you everything you needed to do to create anything you want in your life. And as a possibility, you could go back and watch this daily and just repeat this and create something amazing out of your life. And so the reason I brought this course on was to share what we do in our trainings. This is what we create in the trainings. We spend time when we go through these with you. And so this is the end of the presentation, just like the ending of the book. It's the end of the book, but is it? It's the beginning of you. As you look at what's possible for you, if you want to learn more about what we're creating, just hold your camera up to that little box there and it'll show you some of the information on what we're creating with this 4-week program. But really go back through what we've learned tonight, whether you do anything or not with this, and look at possibilities for you around creating the life that you want. And so I just want to thank you all for your time tonight. I'm going to wrap it up right there and open it up to Q&A. Do you guys have questions that you would like me to dive into? Thank you, Jen. You guys can go ahead and unmute if you want to share. What was your biggest takeaway? If I could ask you your biggest takeaway from this course. Yeah, Krista, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I've got to unmute here.
Yeah.
So, I don't even know if my video's on. I just unmuted. Maybe I'm showing
Yeah,
too.
you're good. We can see you.
That's good.
Okay, so I'm just thinking through so many of the things that you brought up again, and I'm really grateful for them. So thank you first for taking your time to do this.
Yeah.
And then conceptualizing that idea of the tree. And that was a really good one for me because I'm one who used to struggle a lot with that idea of wanting to plan everything out. I had this golden path, you know,
Yeah.
and the way was paved for me. And I knew I would achieve the castle on this path. And none of that worked the way I wanted it to. And it was a really good thing because ending up being, you know, getting into that space where I could be flexible and conceptualizing a different end made all the difference for me. And so instead now of looking at these ultimate goals or things,
Yeah.
I find myself just adhering to certain principles or character traits that I want to incorporate into my life in different ways. And so through that, I've had opportunities that I never could have planned, never could have imagined, that
Yeah.
are far greater than I am or than I would have put on a vision board. So I'm still kind of wondering where that in between is.
Yeah.
And I liked the idea of the tree because it spoke to me in terms of being a little bit vague with maybe a specific outcome or vision board goal, but just adhering to the things that really matter most to me. And that way it allows it to go wherever. So does that make sense? It's a little hard to say.
Yeah. Oscar Wilde, I think, has a quote. He says that we are not nouns. We are more like verbs. You know, that instead of defining ourselves by one thing, like I am a doctor, I am a lawyer, that we verb those things. We take action around those and we might do those things, but that's not who we are.
Yeah.
And so in your way of being and your principles that you've established, it gives you an opportunity to verb all these different things. You really, in a sense, creating your vision of values.
Yes.
And allowing those to create your world.
Yes.
And which within that, a vision. So having a vision, talking about a single tree, you might have one tree that's an apple tree. You might have another tree that's a pear tree. You might have different plants in your garden, all from the experience of who you're being in your world. And so if you look back at the beginning of this, when we look at values and beliefs and thoughts and affect and how that creates your world and how you're being, then it would tie directly into that, because now you can go out and decide, well, I want to experience this and hold a vision for creating that thing in your life. Does that make sense?
Yes. And by that thing, you don't mean necessarily a specific long-term, I don't know, how do you do that? A long-term goal or something that's more of a principle-based goal?
Yeah.
Because mine is, you know, if I adhere to those principles, then I'm flexible. Whatever life brings to me, there'll be greater opportunities than I could have stuck on a board.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen things like that play out in my life where I have a vision for something and something better comes along that I couldn't have imagined, you know, and, or there's an experience where I think, man, it would just be nice to survive this thing. And then I get through to the other side and it's beautiful on the other side of it.
Yes. And I don't want to blow with the wind, you know, so there's a part of me that wants to kind of stick to that path and create a new golden path in a new way. And there's a part that says, no way, that will never work for me.
Yeah. Let me see if I can get all the way back here. I don't know if it'll let me do this. Let me try. You guys like Boris Johnson there. My daughter threw that on there. Let's see. Going back to the tree of change, I'll just talk it through. You talk about the culture that helps lay the foundation of our values. And then those values lay the foundation for our beliefs. And then our beliefs decide what thoughts we pay attention to. And then from that, we have our affect. There's always, your emotions always stem from a thought. And so those emotions create your attitude and your affect. And then that's how you speak into the world. And then that's how you create in the world. You act off those things that you speak into the world. So that prediction gives us a chance to kind of play that out in advance. What you're doing in a way is really leaving it up to chance in a fun way, in a playful way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Instead of predicting it, you're more of, I'm going to be a certain way and see what shows up.
Yeah. So it still opens up those possibilities and
Mhm.
lives in that world of uncertainty, but not just in a way that is
You're just
too
blowing in the
whimsical.
wind. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can hear that. And so really what I hear within is that you're creating yourself as a being that experiences whatever comes,
Yes.
which is a vision. That could be a vision for somebody. Somebody else might hold a vision like Justin's where he's going to run 250 miles. And that would also be very useful. So the idea would come back to what's useful.
I
And-
love that.
Yeah, blowing in the wind is one of those things where you're not putting any effort into your life at all. Like you're just taking whatever comes and you have no say. What you're saying is that you have a say in who you're being and you're playing with whatever comes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel as limiting as
Yeah,
it
I
does
like
for
that.
me to now say, I want that perfect picture,
I love
because there's
it.
something better that I can't paint.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's and you might find other things down the road where you do really want to focus in,
Yes.
and you would use a similar behavior to create that, just like you are right now.
Thank
Does
you.
that speak to what you were sharing?
Yes, it really does. And I always say, it's just entrepreneurial brain, which is
Yeah.
I'll do this thing and then I can do this too. And it's a little bit like Dorothy was saying, there's a struggle in wanting to do so many things and put greatness out in so many ways, but
Yeah.
then being exhausted by it. And I don't want that. I don't want to wear myself out doing that. So I want to make sure that I'm present with myself as one of the principles and that
Yeah.
I'm doing these things, but not denying or limiting the opportunities.
Yeah.
So I like the way that you framed that. It's about becoming, and that's my vision. It's who I want to become as opposed to what I want to experience maybe.
I love the idea of something better. There's something you might not even imagine that will
Oh,
come
yeah.
about. I look at some of the creations that we have with the League of Giants, Tribe of Giants, the Giants and the Smalls, all of our programs, and some of the things that we have today, I couldn't have imagined a year ago. They weren't even on the radar. And so as we've started to see things open up that weren't even on our vision back then. We have a grand vision of impacting the world, but even that is open.
Sure.
Also, Krista, inside of that too, I can tell just from who you're being. I don't know you, and you don't know me that well, maybe, but I can tell just from this little conversation of how you're already being. I can feel it. I can feel your energy, and so I just wanted to celebrate that right there. Is that you're already being giant. Keep going. Keep doing it. You're amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot.
Thank you for sharing. Anything else you want to share or any other breakthroughs or thoughts?
I'll pause my time. I appreciate you taking that time. I'll scoot out.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to share or have any thoughts, insights, breakthroughs?
This is Dorothy Inez.
Yeah.
I just say this whole thing was just a breakthrough, just the ability to just share authentically. I just feel lighter right
Mm.
now. I just
beautiful.
feel lighter, and I'm glad. Like I wrote on my note, I almost didn't come on because I was like, oh, I'm tired. But something said, nope, you're gonna listen. You're gonna, I told you I was gonna be quiet, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you sure don't want to see me right now. I'm looking hella crazy. But yeah, I just feel, and you're always so good. You with all this brainiac stuff, you start losing me because it's so intellectual, but yet I'm intrigued by it all, of understanding this our brains and how they work. So I'm always appreciative of what you bring. And what really stood out too was the thing about gratitude, where you talked about, we are told to do these practices and, oh, you got to have this gratitude practice and you got to do it. And I always wondered, why don't I ever really feel different afterwards? And probably because it was something I felt like, oh, it's like you said, it's something you got to check off, that, you know, got to do your gratitude, you got to do this, you got to do that. So I wasn't really feeling into it. And so that was kind of an aha for me. Just the whole thing.
I love it.
And the whole thing you did today, and the depression, seeing because I knew I was going through depression, and I, you know, because I'm all about getting support. I called my counselor and I'm like, you know, I'm going through this. I know it's depression, but I got to figure out, you know, how do I break this off me, because it's not who I am and who I be in the world, but it's on me. And using it, the energy of it, to because life's always happening for me, not to me. How do I use it to grow and step into that next level of myself? And you just like affirmed what I was thinking, but you gave me kind of this process, like, oh, this is where you're at. Okay, it's an awareness and enlightenment, so I can understand where I'm at and grow in this moment. Be like, okay, all right, because you're taught, oh, you got to pop a pill, and I refuse to pop a pill.
Yeah.
For it. I'm like, why is it here? What is it here to teach me, so I can hurry up and move on?
Yeah, I think all of your emotions are going to serve you in some form. Everything that comes into your space is going to serve you if you'll allow it. Our resistance to it just keeps us stuck. So when we get into that depressed state, and then we don't want to face it, and we ruminate, and we wonder, why am I here? And we don't want to be there. Then we don't ever step out of it. We don't get to step into reality and reflect and re-engage with life. And the whole purpose of any grief or depression is to re-engage. At any point, any one of us could have quit and stepped out and stepped off this earth. In some cases, people do that. And the goal is to re-engage, to find something that gives you purpose and meaning. Because you'll notice a lot of the words that come up within depression are, I don't matter. I'm not worthy. I'm useless.
Oh yeah, all that stuff. I'm lonely. Nobody cares about me. I'm telling you, the whole gamut on that page that you showed. Dorothy Inez has been telling herself, and I have to slap myself out of it with truth. No, people do care. Got to find evidence that people do care about you, Dorothy Inez, and you do matter. And the work you do, you know, you always got to, your brain just wants to keep going down that negative path, and you have to, you know, snap yourself back into truth and find, you know, because you can easily find all the stuff that says the opposite, the lies. So I don't know if you and Ryan saw my question, but on the sales page, it says September 5th.
Yeah, I put the wrong date in.
Yeah.
It's October 5th.
Okay, that's what
so
day of the week is that?
They're on Tuesdays. So I do Tuesdays.
Oh, okay.
So that should be Tuesday the 5th.
Okay.
And it's every week. So, man, thank you, Dorothy and Ez, for sharing. Sarah, thank you. Have a good night. Thanks for being a part of this. Any other thoughts before we wrap up, guys? I don't want to hold you hostage all night. Justin, I know you're 2 hours ahead of us. 11:20, right? Man,
yeah.
Thank you.
11:20, but no, man, you have a powerful way of speaking, simplifying certain things, you know, like Dorothy said, you're a brainiac in a way, but the way you explain it, some of the analogies, the way you know, go over things, it helped me see and click things in my head differently, you know, that I had obviously explored over the, you know, past weeks and months and years of our lives, right? But just kind of the way you show up, the space you create, and the way you do it is very unique. So I appreciate your time, and
thank you.
It was worth every minute of it, man.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate you staying up so late.
Yeah, I'm out right now. Good night.
Thanks, Justin. See you, buddy.
Guys, thanks for being on. If you have other thoughts or questions, hit me up on Messenger. You're welcome to do that. And just appreciate you all being here. Thanks for being a part of this.
Thanks, Nick.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Jen. Good to see you.
Love you, Jen.
I didn't see your face there, but love you.
Love you too.
All right. Anything you want to share, Jen?
You know, Yeah. So I've listened to this before, but
Yeah.
it's way different. I'm kind of in this weird funk right now.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's really a nice refresher
Huh.
because I think we all get in funks and we forget that this journey is cyclical. Like we're a rock going around an orb.
Yeah.
We keep doing it.
Yeah.
And it's the
Feels like we're
seasons.
on a rock flying through space.
Kind of like that. Yeah, this
weird.
planet way out there.
Yeah.
So it's a nice refresher to see it and just kind of be like, okay, yeah, you're back here
Yeah.
and you've got to do this and other things. And I'm learning to give myself grace in a lot of this. So
Yeah.
it was really good. It was nice to hit it again and like, oh yeah, here's where and that's what I was saying before. Like, okay, in February, we're going to dive a little deeper onto step 4. And you'd be like, oh my God, sign me up.
Right. And we're going to create that still, because I love that idea, is just go into those and, each month really dive in deep on one of these areas. But yeah, thank you. Thanks for being on again.
No, thank you for sending me the link. And I was like, oh, it's 8:30. I got to go.
It's so late everywhere. One day we'll do these a little earlier in the day.
And then you'll be eating dinner because it's like 4 o'clock your time.
Right. Well, we love you. Thank you.
No problem. Have a good night, guys.
Love you, Jen.
Yep.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.